Incredible twist, after 10 years, Billionaire discovers he is the father of hidden twins, truth unraveled. The moment Mark Henderson, self-made billionaire and ruthless corporate tycoon, stepped back into his childhood home, nostalgia hit him like a freight train. The worn wood floors creaked beneath his polished shoes, echoing the memories of laughter and warmth that once filled the air. 10 years in the high-stakes arena of corporate America had left him powerful but hollow. He had climbed the mountain of success, only to find himself standing at the summit, surrounded by the ghostly silhouettes of family and friends long cast aside. As he wandered through the familiar confines, each picture on the wall was a reminder of the values his father instilled in him: honesty, hard work, loyalty. Mark had paid a heavy price for his ambitions, trading those values for boardroom victories and profit margins. The emptiness in his chest grew heavier with each step deeper into the sanctum of his past. Suddenly, from the living room, he heard giggles that pierced through his wall of regret. Walking in, he stumbled upon them, 2 10-year-old girls, brimming with energy, their laughter contagious. They were lost in a world of crayons and creativity, crafting vibrant masterpieces on the coffee table. The resemblance was unmistakable, they were mirrors of his younger self, reflecting the childhood he once cherished. Then it hit him. These were his daughters, born from the love he thought was buried under the weight of ambition, a secret kept by Anna, the girl he once loved, the woman who believed his wealth and success would only bring them pain. He had been a ghost in their lives. Mark's heart raced. The weight of responsibility crashed over him like a tidal wave. They were the daughters he never acknowledged, remnants of a past he abandoned. Questions flooded his mind: had he lost everything worth fighting for in the pursuit of corporate dominance? Could he just walk away from all he had built for a life that once called to him? He felt the gnawing anxiety of regret gnash at his insides. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The corners of his mind were a battlefield, torn between the life he built and the family that imploded in his absence. He felt like an imposter, standing in front of these girls, who were untainted by the wealth he had hoarded. They captivated him, their creativity reminded him of the joys he had cast aside. But as he watched them, a wave of fear washed over him. What if he dragged them into his world of privilege? What if they became just another dollar sign in a company ledger? Mark's thoughts spiraled as he recalled each school event he had missed, each dance recital, every single milestone he had sacrificed for success. What remained for him but a long lifetime of corporate conquests? The twins' innocent smiles ignited a flicker of hope and desperation in his heart. Yet, that flicker was dimmed by a looming sense of failure. He approached them, trying to foster a connection, but the distance felt insurmountable. Their laughter echoed in his ears as a constant reminder of the life he let slip through his fingers. The school art exhibition approached, a locus of emotions charging towards a breaking point. Could he allow himself to embrace fatherhood again, or was he forever shackled to the gilded cage he had formed? Mark's chest tightened. His daughter's eyes sparkled with motivation, silently asking for recognition. Just then, one twin glanced across the room, catching his gaze. Hope shimmered in her eyes, pulling him into an existence he had long since forsaken. Would he step forward into that world? Or would he retreat, a prisoner of his own making? The answer hung in the air, suffocating in golden, a weighty silence that demanded resolution, but did not provide. Mark hesitated, standing at the threshold of connection. The warmth of his daughter's laughter was a stark contrast to the sterile confines of his corporate life. Each giggle rang like a bell, summoning memories of a joyful childhood he had chosen to leave behind. The internal struggle morphed into a cacophony, amplifying every doubt he harbored about his choices. He was a successful businessman, yet in this moment, he felt utterly ill-equipped for the challenge of being a father. With deliberate effort, he stepped forward, attempting to bridge the chasm that had formed between him and his daughters. Their art project, a chaotic mosaic of colors, struck him not as mere scribbling, but as a manifestation of their innocence, their love, a desire for connection. Could he be the father they deserved? The thought, tinged with urgency, rooted itself deep in his mind. "Hey, what are you creating?" he asked, deliberately softening his voice, fighting against his instinct to assert authority. The girls paused, wide-eyed. It was a simple question, yet it felt monumental. They glanced at each other, exchanging silent encouragement before one of the twins replied, "We're making a picture of our family." Such a simple comment unraveled the very fabric of his existence. A family. Their family. The reality washed over him. Their perception was untainted, pure, and wielded a power he had completely underestimated. Mark felt a jolt of defiance rise within him. He wanted to protect these girls from the shadows of his past decisions. Yet, how could he shield them when he had been absent? He slowly knelt beside them, an unfamiliar sensation coursing through him. Was this humility he felt? No sweets, no ties, just a man who chose to be present. "Can I help?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper, as if inviting them to welcome him into a world he had long neglected. Their faces lit up, and the youngest girl handed him a crayon as if handing him an olive branch. He took it, not realizing how heavy that one small gesture would feel. Suddenly, he was struck with the awareness of how out of place he was, yet he realized he wanted to belong. He wanted to shift his focus from the boardroom to the living room, from mergers to memories, from a business deal to building relationships. As they colored together, Mark's mind raced. He was no longer just a distant image in their lives. For better or worse, he was their father now, a possibility he had denied himself for too long. The question loomed, could he pivot? Was it possible to reconcile the ruthless tycoon with the loving father? This tension stirred a sense of clarity he hadn't anticipated. Mark began to visualize the art exhibition approaching, and the chance to showcase the girls' talents to family and friends. He wanted to be part of that world. It would not only display their creativity but also signify his commitment, the first step towards mending years of absence. The fear of failure lingered. What if he remained unworthy in their eyes? What if they thought of him as just a stranger in a new suit? These thoughts nipped at his heels, yet they only fueled his determination. He could redefine success not in terms of profit margins, but through love, understanding, and presence. Suddenly, in the silence created by his thoughts, Mark heard his daughters' excited chatter as they shared their ideas for the exhibition. He didn't know how to navigate this new territory yet, but he could feel the stirrings of purpose igniting within him. A journey back to his core values called out being present, loving freely, embracing family. Before he could form another thought, the twins began to invite him into their world, and with that one crayon in hand, he could sense it was just the beginning. The stakes were higher now, not merely an exhibition but a revelation of what it meant to be part of a family. The moment elegantly swayed into the unknown as a rush of excitement filled the air. Now came the most critical decision. He would test his resolve one more time. How would he confront the repercussions of his past for the sake of forging something new? He loomed over the precipice of transformation, each breath a bridge to the next chapter he had to face. Would he dare to step closer, fully committing to a path he hadn't imagined walking? Mark sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered around him like the remnants of his corporate life. The chaotic colors merged on the paper, and with each stroke, a thought took shape within him. He was reclaiming his identity, not just as a businessman, but as a father. Yet amid the laughter, darker shadows loomed, the echoes of boardroom decisions that had stolen his presence from this very moment. Watching his daughters, their innocence illuminated by sheer joy, he felt a pang of regret mix with his determination. Those years spent engrossed in spreadsheets and meetings had cost him irreplaceable time. The realization clawed at him, igniting a fierce resolve. If he was to belong in this world, he had to face the implications of the past, the choices he made that led him here, and the time lost that could never be recaptured. "Can you tell me about your ideas for the exhibition?" Mark ventured, craving more than idle conversations. The twins paused, exchanging glances that seemed to cloak them in a secret thrill. Their excitement crackled in the air, lifting his spirits. "We want people to see how much fun we have together. We'll paint a big canvas," and as one twin spoke, the other jumped in, "and we want to add our favorite memories with you." At that moment, Mark felt an unfamiliar warmth swell in his chest, a blend of hope and fear. What if they painted memories that highlighted his absence rather than his presence? He could almost hear the echo of cynical laughter from the past. "You're too late, Mark." Yet, that laughter faded as he saw the joy in their eyes. These weren't just children envisioning a future devoid of their father, they were creating a space for him, a narrative in which he could integrate himself. It became clear that the art exhibition was not merely an event, it was a chance for him to establish a foundation of trust and connection. "Let us make it our project then," he proposed, enthusiasm edging his voice. "We can plan everything together. What colors do we want?" The twins erupted in glee, already lost in the process of selection and design. Each moment felt like a triumph in an uncharted territory, a declaration of family anchored in collaboration. As they clumsily created together, Mark recognized a flicker of hidden talent emerge from within himself. It wasn't artistry, it was vulnerability, the capacity to openly engage, to share burdens through laughter, the simple magic of being present. Each crayon he wielded was a step away from the desensitized corporate drone. He had been a man who could value connections more than contracts. However, the anxiety of past responsibilities gnawed at the edges of his newfound purpose. Questions spiraled in his mind. How would he explain his absence to those in his business circles? How would he justify this shift if it didn't yield tangible results? What if the rifts he had forged in his ambition proved too deep to bridge? Although laden with self-doubt, he pressed on, unwilling to retreat into the shadows of his former life. The twins' laughter bounced around the room, and with it came a wave of courage mixed with resolve. He began to realize that the bigger risks lay not in his business-failed pitches but in the vulnerability this new role demanded. Committing to fatherhood was a leap of faith, one he recognized could also lead to failure, but also to the possibility of something profoundly beautiful. As evening descended, the golden light filtering through the windows illuminated a moment of clarity. He was standing at a crossroads, and this was only the beginning. Could he elevate this fear of inadequacy into a powerful force for growth? The potential hung in the air, intoxicating yet heavy with unworthiness. He wanted this not only to showcase his daughter's art but to strive for an identity that integrated both worlds within him. What did fatherhood demand, and could he truly deliver? The answers felt elusive, swirling around him, leaving him on the precipice of doubt and exhilaration. A knock on the door broke the idyllic bubble that had formed with his daughters. A voice on the other side called out to him, an unexpected visitor, one from his past. As he turned towards the door, a sense of foreboding filled his chest. Was it time to face the realities of his former life? Mark hesitated at the door, the familiar echo of uncertainty drumming in his chest. Who would come calling at this hour, and what would they want from him? The laughter of his daughters faded, replaced by echoes from his corporate past that threatened to swirl him back into that life, a life where he had chased success only to find himself hollow inside. "Daddy?" One of the twins called softly, sensing his tension. It tugged at him, a tether pulling him back from the brink of anxiety. He took a deep breath and opened the door to reveal Charlie, an old business associate with a reputation for being both charming and ruthless. "Mark." Charlie greeted, a smile plastered on his face. "I thought I'd find you holed up in an office somewhere, not playing with crayons." The lightness in Charlie's tone jarred against the weight of Mark's newfound purpose. "I took some time off," Mark replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's up?" Charlie stepped inside, glancing at the scattered crayons and artwork on the floor. "Well, I'm here on business actually. it's about an opportunity that I think you'll want to consider." The room felt suffocatingly small as his former colleagues started detailing a new project that could skyrocket their fortunes. "We need someone with your vision. Think of the resources, the power, the connections." Mark's mind raced. Those same lures had once pulled him away from the present into a nebulous future filled with wealth and prestige. As Charlie spoke, memories flashed through his mind, late nights spent balancing budgets, tense negotiations, the perpetual hunger for success that had driven him. "But Charlie, I'm focusing on," Mark started, but the appeal intensified. "This isn't just another deal, Mark. It's a game changer. You could be back on top." The prospect dangled before him, seductive yet terrifying, a siren call beckoning him toward a reality he thought he was escaping. Would he choose that life again, driven by ambition at the cost of what truly mattered? Images of his daughter's bright smiles flickered behind his eyelids, reminding him why he had made this leap in the first place. A wave of realization crashed over him. This was the moment that could define him, a true test of his values. What if he slipped back into the corporate grind and lost everything he had just begun to build with his daughters? A gnawing doubt encroached upon his resolve. He could feel the tug-of-war within. "Charlie, I appreciate it, but I can't go back," he finally declared, his voice gaining a steadiness he didn't know he possessed. "I'm exploring a different path now, one that involves being a father." The surprise on Charlie's face was palpable, blinked by the admission. "Fatherhood isn't a resume builder," he retorted, almost incredulously. "You could leverage this opportunity to create an empire. Why settle?" Mark felt the blood rushing in his ears. Was this what he risked? Was his new purpose disregarded as insignificant compared to profits and power? "Settling isn't a word I'd use," Mark countered, his heart steadying. "It's about finding balance, something I've lost for too long." The conviction in his voice surprised even him. Each word felt like a foothold on uncertain terrain. A silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken challenge. Charlie's eyes narrowed, with a hint of skepticism creeping into his demeanor. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you when you realize what you're giving up." As the door clicked shut behind Charlie, a new wave of fear washed over Mark, followed by clarity. He was faced not just with a career choice but an existential dilemma. Could he truly forge a new identity without the career that once defined him? The twins returned, breaking his reverie, and their joyous laughter filled the space once more. "Can we paint now, Daddy?" one of them asked eagerly. Mark knelt beside them, pushing aside the ghosts of his past. "Absolutely," he replied. Yet, beneath the surface, the encounter churned unanswered questions. Could one snap decision unravel the tenuous fabric of trust he had begun to weave with them? He picked up a crayon, the vibrant color pulsating with promise. Yet as he sketched alongside his daughters, uncertainty lingered, a shadow closing in. How would he reconcile the past with the future he wished to build? The urgency of the moment settled heavily as the evening deepened. The uninvited visitor had prompted a reckoning, and he could feel the next decision looming. Had he truly chosen the right path? Just as his twin daughters reached out to him with radiant smiles, the weight of his unresolved past felt like a storm gathering on the horizon. A light knock jangled through the air once more. This time, a different voice called from behind the door, one perhaps even more daunting than Charlie's. As Mark turned toward it, thoughts spiraled about whether this next visitor would open another chapter in his struggle between ambition and fatherhood. Mark's heart clenched as he shifted to answer the door. There was a tremor of familiarity in that innocuous knock, one that dug deeper into his foundations. With a cautious eagerness, he pulled the door open, revealing Samantha, his former assistant, standing there, her hair pulled tightly into a bun and her gaze intense. "Mark," she greeted, her tone suggesting she wasn't here for pleasantries. "We need to talk." He swallowed hard, the intensity of her presence igniting memories that were meant to stay buried. "What brings you here?" he asked, wondering if he should worry about what fresh chaos was about to unfold. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her demeanor as direct as he remembered from their years of working together. "I'm here because you need to know that your decision to step away from the corporate world might not be as simple as you think." The weight of her words settled in like a stone. "What do you mean?" Samantha's eyes locked onto his, steady and slicing through his uncertainty. "Charlie's not just looking for you, Mark. There's a project that could impact a lot of lives, and you turning him down might just create ripples that come back to you." "What does it have to do with me?" he pressed, though he could already sense where the conversation was headed. In that instant, the room felt both claustrophobic and liberating. Memories of boardrooms, strategies, and financial forecasts slipped silently away as she elaborated. "You have an opportunity that goes beyond profits. If you engage with this project, you can redefine what success means not just for you, but for families like yours." Mark shifted uneasily, a part of him understanding the potential sway these words carried. "And become a puppet for corporate greed again?" His voice held more edge than he intended. "Not a puppet, an architect," she argued, her conviction undeterred. "This isn't about escaping your responsibilities. It's about embracing a new kind. You could drive initiatives that prioritize people while still achieving economic growth. Use your strengths, Mark." Her fervor was contagious, yet he grappled with the twists of emotion churning inside him. Could he separate the allure of ambition from the weight of responsibility he felt at home? "What if I fail?" Mark whispered, the silence encouraging deeper reflection. "What if I lose myself in the process yet again?" Samantha stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then you adapt and learn. Every setback is an opportunity to redefine what you stand for. You've got daughters watching you. Imagine the example of resilience you could set." As her words sunk in, Mark envisioned his daughters tiny beings who once relied entirely on him. If he were to take a leap, could it not be for them as well? His breath steadied as possibilities unfurled before him. "I need to think," he confessed, aware of the gravity of her proposition. "Think quickly," she urged, her expression tight. "Charlie won't wait forever, and the stakes are higher than you realize." Mark nodded thoughtfully, fully aware of the urgency. Samantha turned to leave, but then paused, her voice softer now. "You know what family means better than anyone. Don't forget that integrating kindness with ambition is what will keep you grounded." After she departed, Mark stood at the threshold, mind racing. Could there truly be a pathway that harmonized his professional skills with his personal values? The edge of fear intertwined with a flickering flame of determination, leaving him at a crossroads. His daughters called out from the other room, laughter ringing like a distant bell, puncturing his musings. The ongoing dance between ambition and fatherhood took center stage in his heart. What had begun as a sanctuary now felt like a dual existence fraught with responsibility and possibility. Before settling into the warmth of family time, Mark pondered the reality of his future. Outside, the night deepened, the stars glimmering in the expanse of possibility. Would he have the courage to step into the arena once more to harness the ambition that once consumed him, without losing sight of what mattered most? Just as he was about to embrace that thought, a message pinged on his phone, pulling him back into a swirl of decisions. It was from an unknown number, igniting a new sense of dread. As he hesitated, he wondered if this was the moment that could shatter the balance he had fought so hard to establish. The pull of the message was undeniable, like a low rumble reverberating in the pit of his stomach. He stared at the screen, the unknown number blurring into a haze of anxiety and anticipation. Hesitation gripped him. Was it curiosity, fear, or the remnants of a lifetime spent entangled in secrets that held him back? With a deep breath, he tapped the notification, heart racing as he opened the message. It was brief yet cryptic: "We need to meet. It's urgent." No name, no further details. The words slithered into his mind, whispering of complications he had long thought settled. The taste of intrigue mixed uncomfortably with dread. Mark cast a glance toward the laughter of his daughters, and guilt washed over him. Could he prioritize this potential disruption of his carefully curated life? The voice of reason battled against the pull of curiosity, a duel he'd felt too many times before. Before he could dwell further on the implications, his phone rang. The screen displayed the same unknown number. As he pressed the button to answer, Mark sensed the weight of possibility pressing down on him. "Hello?" He spoke, his voice was steadier than he felt inside. "Mark? It's Charlie." The familiar voice of his former colleague sent jolts through his mind. "I understand you've had a visitor. Samantha filled me in on your potential involvement." Mark hesitated, grappling with the reality that Charlie's curiosity fed into a dramatic turn of events. "I haven't made any decisions about the project." "Then let me give you some context before you do." Charlie's tone shifted from casual to urgent. "That message you received, it's more than you think. It ties into the initiative we're working on. Lives are at stake. I need you to understand the full picture." A swell of emotions crashed over him. Was this the serious, almost desperate side of Charlie he rarely encountered? Mark closed his eyes, picturing his daughters, their safety intricately bound to the choices he would make. "What do you mean?" "Let us meet," Charlie pressed. "I can't discuss over the phone, but if you want to truly understand what's at risk, you need to hear it from me." Ignoring a moment of weakness, Mark grasped onto the thread of the conversation. "All right, but it better be good." Charlie offered a brief laugh that fell flat in the tense air. "You'll see." As they agreed on a time to meet, Mark felt a blend of apprehension and intrigue. Could this be the ignition he needed to finally fuse his desires for ambition and family? His past with corporate motives had served as a shield, but now, a different kind of armor felt necessary, one that embraced vulnerability over arrogance. Time crawled until their meeting. The hours felt heavy, each tick of the clock unraveling his secure facade. He attempted to focus on his girls, but the anticipation gnawed at the edges of his thoughts, relentless. In the quiet of the evening, as his daughters settled down for bed, he wondered if this journey was about more than reconnecting with his professional expertise. What if it was an awakening of his true potential? The realization that he needed to embrace his past but redefine his commitment left him wrestling with a familiar tension. That night, while lying in bed, curiosity transformed into resolve. He pictured what success could feel like combined with integrity, the possibility of leading toward sustainable futures, both in business and as a father. A part of him now burned brighter with a sense of duty, not only to provide for his daughters but to set a benchmark of resilience and ethics. As sleep eluded him in the early hours, the weight of his pending choices hovered like a shadow. He knew stepping back into that world came with risks, but what Charlie had hinted at gnawed at his instinct. This wasn't merely about personal ambition anymore. The next morning, as dawn broke, Mark dressed with purpose, a mindset sharpening around the meeting ahead. He felt the call of a new chapter, one that could blend his half-torn selves into a cohesive narrative that honored both ambition and family. Just as he was about to leave, another notification buzzed from his phone, turning his blood cold. The message came from the same unrevealed number, more urgent this time. "We need to talk. Please don't ignore this." With each pulse of anticipation, Mark realized the stakes were higher than he ever expected, and time was slipping through his fingers. Would this unexpected confrontation guide him further away from the security he sought, or finally push him toward an authentic path he never considered? As Mark stood at the threshold of his front door, the notification from the unknown number pulsed in his pocket like an approaching storm. Every fiber of his being screamed to turn back, to embrace the stillness of his current life, yet everything within him also craved movement, a leap into the unknown. Pulling the phone from his pocket, he hesitated. What if the urgency behind the message was more than just a professional concern? What if it touched on issues surrounding his family? As he stared at the screen, the usual cacophony of his responsibilities felt muted by the weight of uncertainty. He shook his head, forcing himself to breathe deeply. Today was a turning point. The drive to the cafe was clouded with thoughts and scenarios, each more bizarre and troubling than the last. He wrestled with implications of re-entering a world laced with ethical murkiness. Long hours spent chasing deals and numbers had once excited him, but now, the allure felt dangerously close to self-destruction. What had once been ambition now mingled with apprehension, a fear of losing what he loved most. Upon arriving, Mark spotted Charlie at a corner table, fingers tapping restlessly on the surface, a far cry from the confident colleague he used to know. The older man greeted him with a nod, eyes wide and serious. "Thanks for coming," Charlie said, his voice low, stripped of its usual bravado. "I won't waste your time. This has escalated." Mark took a seat, 1,000 questions swirling in his mind. "You said lives are at stake?" "Explain," he insisted, grounding himself with a sense of authority, unwilling to tiptoe around whatever shadows loomed ahead. "Remember the project we were working on years ago? The one that fell apart?" Charlie leaned in closer, as if the words themselves might draw unwanted attention. "There's been a resurgence. Someone's trying to bring it back, and it's not for the right reasons. I need specifics." Mark's heart raced, a nagging sense of danger bubbled under his skin. "This isn't just business," Charlie added. "There are people involved who want to manipulate the outcomes for personal gain. If we don't intervene, innocent people could be hurt. You've got a unique capability they need, but it's risky." The mention of risk reframed Mark's thoughts into a sharp focus. Did he possess the courage to involve himself in yet another jam-packed scenario with potential fallout? Past regrets clawed at his conscience, urging him to retreat, to preserve his family's safety. Yet tethered to that was a flicker of something raw and potent resolve. "Tell me what you want me to do," he replied, dampening his trepidation. The words tasted foreign in his mouth, a strange pledge of allegiance to a force still very much alive in him. He realized he was not just embarking on a professional reconstruction, he was awakening a side of himself long familiar, yet forced into hibernation out of fear. Charlie's expression morphed, an amalgamation of relief and urgency. "I need you to gather intel. Go dive into the past files, figure out who's behind this and what they intend to do. With your expertise, we can take the intel to the authorities. We might just unearth a much larger cabal." The enormity of the task weighed heavy, but within the responsibility lay an unanticipated clarity and opportunity to redefine who he was. Buried beneath the challenges of daily life, a fire began to burn brighter in him, igniting ambitions that had lain dormant for too long. "What you're asking isn't just a task. This is a commitment, Charlie," Mark warned, yet deep down, something tinged his voice with excitement. "Exactly," Charlie's eyes gleamed, revealing a determination to seize the moment. "Are you in, Mark? Because we're pushing back against something that no one else is willing to confront." In that exchange, Mark felt a shift. The challenge before him held the promise of transformation, yet a single chilling thought halted his breath. What would happen if this path threatened to unravel the very foundation he sought to protect? As he stared into Charlie's unwavering gaze, the question crystallized: was he prepared to fight for integrity that risked the security he had painstakingly crafted? The weight of possibility drew him in, it was daunting yet invigorating. Just then, his phone buzzed again. It was another notification from the unknown number. "You're in over your head. Don't ignore." With a purposeful stride, he stood up, shaking off the creeping sense of dread. Today was not just a defining moment, it was a reckoning. The urgency was palpable, and he felt a new part of himself awaken in response. Mark took a deep breath and squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever lay ahead. But as he stepped out of the cafe, his heart still racing, he knew this was just the beginning, one path leading into the unknown depths of a tumultuous journey. What if he wasn't just discovering his professional potential but unearthing a darker side to the web he'd be drawn into? The night air thickened with tension as Mark made his way home, the streets illuminated by flickering lampposts and the distant hum of the city. His mind was a frenetic whirlwind of possibilities, the weight of his conversation with Charlie lingering heavily across his brow. The once dim embers of ambition that had smoldered inside him were now roaring to life, but they were accompanied by an equally daunting darkness, the risk that accompanied his decision. He could feel the lingering heat of Charlie's determination as he replayed their words. Gather intel. Expose manipulations. Fight against misguided ambitions. Each command echoed in his ears like a relentless heartbeat, each one propelling him further into a world he thought he had escaped. This new resolve ignited questions. Who was he to return to that life? What if the stakes were too high, the risks too great? He wrestled with his memories of late nights spent hunched over spreadsheets, the adrenaline pumping through him at the thrill of the chase, the burn of ethical debates echoing in his mind. Arriving at the front door, he hesitated, hand lingering on the knob. The warmth radiating from inside felt inviting, a cocoon from the unpredictable storm swirling in his head. But inside, he knew, was the stability he had crafted for his family, a life he needed to protect at all costs. Yet standing here, he questioned whether the current version of that life was enough. Had he really found sanctity in the monotony, or merely a separate version of fear, one that took the form of security? With a determined exhale, he stepped inside. The muted sounds of laughter filled the air, his children flipping through books at the dining table while his wife began her routine preparations for dinner. Their world felt precious, he found solace in their presence, yet it was becoming achingly clear that it also tethered him to complacency. "Hey, Dad!" his son called, waving him over. Mark forced a smile, masking the turmoil churning within, while listening to verses of school chatter and excitement that cascaded around him. Moments later, as they gathered for dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Laughter echoed off the kitchen walls, a stark contrast to the shadows lurking in Mark's mind. But his thoughts flitted between duty and desire, as he recalled Charlie's final words, "Because we're pushing back against something that no one else is willing to confront." He felt a sudden rush of guilt. Was he prepared to sacrifice the laughter for distant threats? But what if? The thought broke through just as easily as it was grasped. What if this wasn't just about battling corruption? What if it was about reclaiming himself, rediscovering who he could be? The question gnawed at him, filling him with urgency. As soon as the last plate hit the sink, he excused himself and retreated to the quiet of his home office. Closing the door behind him, he pulled out his laptop, the bright screen illuminating the dark room. There he sat, finger hovering over the keyboard, filled with the weight of familiarity and trepidation. It felt oddly empowering to embrace the potential of confronting the shadows lurking in business, yet terrifying as it linked back to his family's safety. He began to sift through digital files and old correspondence, searching for clues about past entanglements, piecing together a story that had unraveled years ago. Each click brought forth memories honed on the harshness of past failures, instances where personal ambition had led him astray, times when good choices had been clouded by greed. And then it struck him, he wasn't just searching for threats buried in the records, but resurrecting a relentless ambition within him. Maybe he had allowed fear to dominate his decisions, stifling the courageous spirit that drove him to new heights once before. As the clock ticked past midnight, Mark paused, feeling a sense of clarity amid the convoluted investigation. He had the ability to confront this newfound situation, to keep his family and values at the forefront while battling the darkness that sought to pull him into the abyss. He was ready to embrace this journey head-on, fortified by the family ties that grounded him. Suddenly, a notification chimed ominously from his phone. It was from the same unknown number. "You don't know how deep this goes," the message read, ominous and stern. Mark leaned back in his chair, adrenaline surging through him. He was at the precipice of transformation. The time had come to face not only the ghosts of his past but also the choices that could define his future and the very essence of his integrity. As the messenger's warning hung like a storm cloud overhead, Mark steeled himself. He needed to pull together every ounce of resolve inside him, for the battle had only just begun, and what lay ahead could change everything. Mark's heart raced in the suffocating quiet of his office. The digital glow of his laptop felt both inviting and threatening, illuminated by the weight of decisions still pending. The message on his phone had slammed against his attempts at resolution, a hard reminder that his journey was only beginning. He wasn't just diving back into a world he thought he had left behind, he was stepping into an intricate web of unrest. He leaned forward, scouring through old emails and documents yet again, but now he approached his investigation with renewed hunger. Each file might reveal elements of corruption, but more importantly, they promised to expose aspects of himself long buried under layers of complacency. His fingers danced across the keyboard, fueled by a blend of anxiety and thrilling anticipation. Stray thoughts whispered fears into his mind. What if he stumbled into dangers that risked everything he held dear? Yet, another part of him embraced that very notion. It represented the challenge he had craved since those days lost to office politics and mundane routines. Mark began to plot an audacious course of action, a strategy to tackle not only the circumstances at hand but also the fears sown deep within him. He was determined not merely to confront a predatory corporate environment but to reclaim the parts of himself that had grown dormant, the daring strategist, the audacious risk-taker. He drafted a plan, outlining potential contacts that could yield vital information. He considered reaching out to old colleagues, some were allies, others, enemies. Would it be reckless to engage with former foes? He questioned whether trust was a privilege he could afford or an illusion that could cost him dearly. Still, he could no longer afford paralysis by analysis. After hours of digging, a chilling thought shifted his perspective entirely. What if the very men he once trusted were now the hidden hands orchestrating the threats against him? The possibility ignited something primal within him, a need to confront not only the giants of industry but to delve into the personal betrayals that had shaped his prior life. Mark halted in his momentum and inhaled deeply, searching his mind for the tangled memories that could hold value in this new mission. As he rifled through past partnerships, he recalled James, a colleague with whom he had shared both triumphs and tensions. Their fallout had been ugly, but there was no denying James' intellect and connections. If he hadn't burned that bridge completely, Mark reasoned, perhaps reaching out could yield results. Digging out his old contacts, he stared at the glowing screen emblazoned with James' number. It felt like a gamble. 100 scenarios flickered before his eyes, revealing potential outcomes. Should he be vulnerable enough to admit he needed assistance? Could he learn from the past rather than remain shackled by it? As he thumbed the screen, Mark felt the gnawing tickle of doubt creep in. Was he truly ready to confront his past, to step into this world once more, knowing full well the consequences? Yet the very act of reaching out to James held the power to redefine him and to reignite a fire that had long threatened to extinguish within. Just as he hovered over the call button, another vibration interrupted him. It was a follow-up message from the unknown number, terse and cryptic. Time is running out. A shiver cascaded down Mark's spine. The stakes were higher than he had imagined, and the confrontation he had wished for was no longer under his control, it was imminent. With renewed determination, he pressed the button to dial. The line rang, each tone a countdown. As the weight of his decisions pressed upon him, he prepared to navigate the darkness that had reluctantly become a part of his life. The call wasn't just about information, it was an essential step toward confronting the fear that had loomed large in his quiet existence all these years. There was no turning back. He was carving a new path, ready to face whatever came next, ready to shatter the barriers that once enclosed him. As the line connected, Mark understood the true nature of his confrontation was not solely with his past, but also with the version of himself he had almost forgotten, the bold and unyielding fighter he could still become. But would he find support or betrayal at the other end of the line? With these thoughts swirling, he braced himself for the dialogue that could either begin his redemption or unravel everything he had tried to protect. Mark sat in his home office, remnants of the day's uncertainty still hovering in the air. The weight of a new choice pressed upon him like an invisible shroud, echoing the seriousness of the phone call he had just committed to making. As he listened to the muffled sound of his daughters laughing in the other room, he felt the pull of his former life reluctantly collide with the warmth of the family he had fought so hard to reconnect with. "Hello? Mark?" James's voice crackled through the phone. The familiarity transported him back to the late nights spent strategizing over projects, but with those memories came the weight of past grievances. Would this call confirm their rift or allow them to rebuild? "James, thanks for taking my call," Mark said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the rush of anxiety. "I need your help. There's a project re-emerging from the past, something dangerous." "Dangerous how?" James replied, the tone shifting. Mark detailed what he had uncovered, the new initiatives that offered the illusion of opportunity but concealed a manipulative agenda. As he spoke, a sense of liberation filled him. The act of seeking assistance was not one of weakness but a crucial step toward reclaiming authority over his life. James listened, asking pointed questions that provided insight into the shadows they both had avoided, perhaps out of fear, for too long. In that exchange, Mark felt an intimacy of purpose ease the tension cloaking his heart. They discussed strategies, old contacts, and potential allies. He had not expected the conversation to flow so seamlessly. James had insights that could help arm Mark against the corporate pitfalls he once had been forcibly ensnared by. Somehow, they were rediscovering camaraderie among the remnants of their past rivalry. As the call wound down, a new determination surged within Mark. He was on the precipice of reclaiming not only his professional life but also a sense of connection to the man he wanted to become. "Let us meet," he proposed, urging James to sit down together to discuss actionable steps. Moments later, he glanced at the clock. Midnight was fast approaching, but the tension of the conversation filled him with purpose rather than fatigue. Before he headed to bed, he sent a short message to the unknown number: "I'm ready for the truth." Sleep came reluctantly, a scattering of thoughts flitting through his mind, each more profound than the last. For the first time, he sensed clarity merging between his business acumen and the role he cherished as a father. If he could ensure a safer path for his daughters while reuniting his fragmented self, perhaps he could create a legacy that transcended the traditional definitions of success. Morning dawned, crisp light filtering through the curtains as he prepared for his meeting with James. He felt a sense of quiet confidence, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the last few days. There was an equilibrium to his thoughts now. It was not merely about reclaiming lost time, but about actively crafting a future grounded in integrity and authenticity. At the cafe, Mark's heart raced, not from anxiety but anticipation. As James arrived, they exchanged pleasantries, but the undercurrent of urgency made the air electric. "Let us dive in," Mark said, presenting the documents he had managed to compile, each page filled with potential leads and red flags he had uncovered. As they pored over the papers, a plan began to materialize, emboldened by their shared commitment to transform the landscape they had both once sought to dominate. Their strategy unfolded organically. Each new idea resonated with Mark's evolving sense of purpose. He was no longer confined to the narrow spaces of ambition defined solely by profit. Here, in collaboration with a former colleague, the essence of their conversation turned to one of illuminating integrity and mutual benefit for people, not just numbers. Weeks passed, and as they successfully navigated the murky waters of corporate intrigue, the sense of accomplishment transformed into something deeper. On the day they secured a pivotal alliance that put their plan into action, Mark felt a wave of fulfillment unlike any victory he had ever known in the cutthroat corporate sphere. He returned home, the door swinging open to the warm familiarity of his family. In the years lost, he'd found strength rooted in vulnerability and authenticity. The laughter of his daughters was the sweetest reminder of what it meant to truly succeed. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, he colored alongside them, the canvas of their existence infused with the hurt and the healing they had all undergone together. The warmth radiated through him, filling the spaces that ambition had once corrupted. Their art transformed in front of them, a chaotic yet heartfelt representation of the myriad memories they would cherish, not just of a father rejoining their lives, but a man who had successfully reconciled his past with his present. In genuine connection, Mark found solid confidence, a newfound identity that weaved together the strands of ambition, family, and integrity he had long forgotten. A realization settled with clarity: true success is not within the boardroom but in the home, where laughter amplifies purpose, reminding him that he is not merely succeeding, he is thriving. As he closed the evening beside his daughters, he beamed with pride, knowing this was the moment to celebrate not just their artistic endeavors, but the reclamation of his life's narrative, an authentic masterpiece in the making. Now, with all that had transpired and yet to come, he took a moment to reflect on how pivotal this journey had become. These experiences redefined him, pressing him to make choices centered around what truly mattered. There, in the assurance of his daughter's smiles, Mark Henderson felt an enduring sense of triumph, a legacy of love being painted anew. To everyone watching this journey unfold, you need to subscribe now to join us on this path of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this inspiring tale. Comment your reactions and theories about Mark's incredible journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this extraordinary conclusion. Your engagement matters. Let us make sure these stories of personal growth resonate with all who crave inspiration.